Did you know that teenagers have solved puzzles that stumped PhDs? That some high schoolers are rewriting the rules of science and law before they can even vote? What if I told you one quiet girl from a small town walked into a courtroom and left a judge speechless? Before we begin today's story, please let us know where you are viewing from. Please remember to subscribe if you like this video. Meet 17-year-old Monley. She lives in a rural town you've probably never heard of. To most people, she's just another teenager. Quiet, ordinary, maybe even a little strange. But what happened when she stood in front of a courtroom will blow your mind. This is the story of how Monley, a girl underestimated all her life, stunned a judge with something no one saw coming. It started like many stories about teenagers, with frustration, misunderstanding, and being underestimated. Monley had always been different. While other kids played video games or scrolled endlessly through social media, she spent her afternoons lost in books, physics, law, cryptography, anything she could get her hands on. She wasn't just curious. She was brilliant. But brilliance can be invisible when you live in a world that doesn't know how to see it. At school, teachers wrote her off as aloof or distracted. At home, her parents, hard-working blue-collar folks, loved her, but didn't quite understand her obsession with theoretical concepts or legal systems. They told her, "Focus on real things, Monley. Get good grades. Think about college." They didn't know that while she was acing her classes without breaking a sweat, she was also secretly studying quantum mechanics and the U.S. Constitution for fun. In her small town, there were no gifted programs, no mentorships, no science fairs where her kind of mind could shine. People thought she was weird. She kept to herself. She never bragged, never showed off. And so, people didn't see her. Until one day, everything changed. It all began with a problem. A real-world problem. Monley was in the local library, thumbing through a book on forensic evidence interpretation, when she overheard two adults talking. One was a defense attorney, the other, an exhausted-looking mother. Her son had been arrested. The case involved a burglary, and the evidence wasn't adding up. Fingerprints, missing timestamps, a surveillance glitch. Something didn't make sense. The mother wept. The lawyer looked resigned. And that's when something clicked for Monley. She wasn't supposed to be listening. But she couldn't help it. Her mind immediately started analyzing the inconsistencies. What if the timestamp error wasn't just a tech glitch? What if it was a human error, or worse, a manipulation? She scribbled notes on the back of her receipt, and, when the lawyer stepped outside to take a call, she did something she'd never done before. She approached the crying mother. "Ma'am," she said softly, "I think your son might be innocent. And I think I can prove it." The woman blinked at her in confusion. "Who are you?" "Just someone who sees patterns." Over the next few weeks, Monley threw herself into the case. She didn't sleep much. She dug into the court filings, public records, camera footage, everything. Using online databases and her knowledge of metadata structures, she found anomalies others had missed. For example, the timestamp glitch wasn't a glitch. It was a known error in the brand of security system used by the store. One that triggered if the device's battery was removed and reinserted during a power surge. She built a timeline, cross-referenced it with utility outage records, and overlaid it with GPS data from nearby traffic sensors. She noticed that the footage used to place the suspect at the scene didn't align with any other data. It was airtight. Or at least it should have been. But no one took her seriously. The defense attorney patted her on the head, literally, and said, "That's cute, sweetie. But leave this to the grown-ups." It stung. Deeply. But it didn't stop her. She printed out a 25-page report, bound it herself, and mailed it anonymously to the judge overseeing the pretrial hearing. And then she waited. 2 weeks passed. Nothing happened. She figured it had been tossed out, unread. But then one Monday morning, her mother received an unexpected call. It was the county courthouse. "Is your daughter Monley Huang?" Her mom's voice trembled. "Yes." "Why?" "Judge Rowland would like to meet her." In person. Tomorrow morning. The next day, Monley stood in front of the largest doors she'd ever seen, palms sweaty, her mind spinning. Inside, the courtroom buzzed. Lawyers whispered, clerks shuffled papers, and the judge, an older man with thick glasses and a skeptical stare, watched her like she was an odd insect crawling across his bench. "You're the one who sent this?" he said, holding up her report. "Yes, Your Honor." "You're 17? "Yes, sir." He squinted at her. "And you wrote all this?" "I did." "Do you even have a law degree?" "No." "Then why should I listen to a teenager?" That's when she stepped forward and said without blinking, "Because I've found the truth, and the evidence doesn't lie." She was given permission to speak. The courtroom, curious and a little amused, let her present. What followed was nothing short of astonishing. With a whiteboard and nothing but a dry erase marker, Monley laid out her findings. She spoke of digital evidence tampering, flaws in the security system's timestamp, inconsistencies in the witness testimony due to lighting conditions, and, most importantly, how the data pointed to someone entirely different. She wasn't just smart. She was clear, persuasive, unshakable. Every question thrown at her, she answered with confidence and precision. Even the prosecutor, who had been dismissive at first, was soon leaning forward, scribbling notes. The turning point came when Monley revealed an overlooked piece of footage. Blurry, yes, but enough to show a clear discrepancy between the suspect's build and the actual perpetrator. The man in the video had a limp. The defendant didn't. Then she played the clip again, slowed it down, enhanced it digitally, and overlaid it with GPS data and motion analytics she'd created herself using Python. The room went dead silent. Judge Rowland put down his pen and stared at her, jaw slack. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that none of the trained professionals in this room caught what you did, but you, a high school student from nowhere, did?" "Yes, sir," she replied. The judge leaned back. "Then it appears we owe this young woman a great deal of gratitude." And just like that, the case shifted. Charges were dropped. The wrongly accused boy's record was cleared. Monley had done what no one else could. The judge called for recess, walked up to her, and said quietly, "You ever think about law school?" "I think about a lot of things," she replied with a shy smile. Monley's story is more than just courtroom drama. It's a reminder that intelligence isn't about age, degrees, or location. It's about vision, courage, and the ability to see what others don't. In a single morning, she changed a boy's life, stunned a judge, and shattered every stereotype about teenagers. If Monley's story inspired you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Ever been underestimated and proved someone wrong? I want to hear it. And don't forget to check out my other videos for more unbelievable true stories that'll challenge everything you thought you knew. Join me next time. Who knows what hidden genius we'll uncover? The courtroom buzzed with chatter as Monley exited, her cheeks flushed not with embarrassment, but exhilaration. For the first time in her life, she had been truly seen. Not just by a teacher or a parent, but by an entire courtroom. By professionals. By the system. Her parents waited outside, confused and overwhelmed. Her mother clutched her phone, staring at the flood of texts from reporters and strangers alike. Her father looked at Monley like she was someone brand new. "Did you really make all those graphs?" her father asked. "That was you." Monley nodded slowly. "Yeah." He scratched his head, eyes wide. "You're smart." She didn't laugh. She just said, "I've always been." Within hours, Monley's story spread like wildfire. Local reporters picked it up first. "Teen girl destroys courtroom with logic." Then it went national. Her name trended on Twitter. Her court presentation video hit 2.7 million views in one day. And by the third morning, news vans lined the quiet street of her neighborhood. People sent gifts, handwritten letters, and even marriage proposals, which thoroughly disgusted her. A representative from Stanford called. Then Harvard. Then MIT. And then, the threats began. Not everyone celebrated Monley's rise. There were whispers that she had embarrassed the court, that she'd made professionals look foolish, that someone like her, a teenager, a girl, and one from an immigrant family, shouldn't be allowed to interfere in official proceedings. That she got lucky. She knew better. She wasn't lucky. She was right. 3 days later, Monley appeared on national TV. The host, a sharp-suited, slick-smiled man with piercing blue eyes, introduced her to the world. "Ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight isn't a lawyer, a professor, or a seasoned analyst. She's 17, from a town of less than 5,000. And last week, she stunned a judge in open court with one of the most brilliant analytical breakdowns legal professionals have ever seen. Please welcome Monley Huang." She walked out, calm but cautious. The crowd erupted, but her eyes were fixed on the host. "So, Monley," he began, "how did it feel to outsmart everyone in that room?" She didn't flinch. "I didn't try to outsmart anyone. I just wanted the truth to win." He smiled, but his tone sharpened. "Do you think you embarrassed them?" She paused. "No. I think the system embarrassed itself. I just held up a mirror." The weeks that followed were surreal. Scholarships, invitations to speak, and consulting offers flooded in. But Monley didn't want to be famous. She didn't want the noise. She wanted change. She wanted other kids like her, quiet, overlooked, underestimated, to be seen. So she did what any genius would. She created something new. With help from a few open-source coders she met online, Monley built a platform called Blindproof, a website that allowed anonymous users to upload case files, security footage, datasets, and timelines from unresolved local legal cases. Using a decentralized verification model she invented herself, contributors could vote on potential theories, add supporting evidence, and challenge flawed logic. At first it was small, a few dozen users. But when Blindproof helped solve its first cold case, a 1996 arson no one had cared about for decades, everything changed. Blindproof exploded. In 6 months, Blindproof had 2 million users. It became a digital haven for truth seekers, digital sleuths, and independent analysts. And at its center was a teenager no one could ignore anymore. But success comes with a cost. A year after her courtroom debut, Monley got a call she'd hoped to avoid. A federal prosecutor named Charles Denton had been following her for months. He wasn't impressed. And now, he wanted her to testify. Denton wasn't asking for a favor. He was issuing a subpoena. One of the cases Monley helped unravel on Blindproof, an embezzlement scandal tied to a well-known senator, was about to go to trial. And her name was all over the file. Monley had to appear in a federal courtroom. This time, not as a curious bystander, but as an expert witness. The stakes were higher, the audience harsher, and the judge? Much tougher. "Let me be clear," Denton said coldly when they met. "I don't like being shown up. I don't care how many fans you have or how cute your story is. You screw this up, you could destroy a case that took years to build. Understand?" Monley looked him in the eye. "Then don't let it be built on lies." Before the trial even began, the opposing counsel filed a motion to block Monley from testifying. They cited her age, her lack of credentials, and accused her of manipulating evidence on her website. The implication was clear. She was just a kid playing detective. Denton didn't defend her. So Monley defended herself. She filed a written rebuttal, 16 pages, airtight, dissecting each accusation and demonstrating that not only had she not tampered with the evidence, but she had actually preserved digital forensics that the prosecution had failed to secure properly. The judge read it. He paused, then ruled, "Miss Huang will testify, and the court will listen." The trial began. This courtroom wasn't filled with curious townsfolk. It was packed with politicians, federal agents, and cameras. The senator on trial was smug, smiling like the outcome was already decided. When Monley took the stand, her hands shook, but only for a moment. She walked the jury through the financial data, cryptic entries, hidden ledgers, offshore transfers. She explained how metadata from PDF invoices had exposed fraudulent billing. She explained that she hadn't uncovered it alone, but with the help of the community on blind proof. Her voice didn't waver. Her logic didn't bend. By the time she stepped down, the senator wasn't smiling anymore. 2 weeks later, the senator was convicted on all charges. The world erupted again. Praise, applause, accolades, but also danger. Blind proof was attacked. First digitally, DDoS attacks, data breaches. Then physically, someone tried to break into her house. Her family had to relocate. That was when the FBI approached her. "We want you to consult for us," they said. "Not publicly. Quietly. We've seen what you can do." Her answer? No. Monley didn't want power. She didn't want fame. She wanted accountability. Working for the FBI meant silence, secrecy, bureaucracy. She wanted sunlight. So instead, she doubled down. She expanded Blind Proof's platform. She created educational modules to teach kids about forensic science, logical reasoning, and digital ethics. She built a scholarship fund, paid for with speaking fees and donations, for gifted students from poor communities. She wasn't interested in being a celebrity. She was building a movement. Everything was changing. Monley had gone from a quiet girl in a forgotten town to a symbol. But symbols attract attention. And the attention that came next was unlike anything she'd faced before. One day, she received an encrypted message from a whistleblower in South America. Attached was a data set. Thousands of documents. At first, it looked like another case of local corruption. But as Monley dug deeper, she realized the implications stretched far beyond any courtroom. This wasn't just fraud. It was genocide. Seen, the message that changed everything. The message came encrypted. Not through blind proof, but through a dark web dead drop, a system Monley rarely monitored. She almost ignored it. But a single phrase in the subject line stopped her cold. Operation Mirefall, for her eyes only. Monley's pulse quickened. That phrase, Mirefall, was familiar. She'd seen it months earlier, buried in a government document leaked by an anonymous user. It had been dismissed as a code name for a failed drug operation. But even then, it felt like a lie. Now, someone was using it to reach her directly. She decrypted the package. It wasn't a message, it was a deluge. Over 4,000 documents. Internal memos. Censored images. Coordinated movement maps. Financial logs. And one classified UN briefing stamped with a word that hit her like a hammer. Monley spent the next 72 hours combing through the files, barely sleeping. Her fingers trembled as she uncovered the pattern. Coordinated displacement of indigenous tribes in a South American border region, under the guise of agricultural reform. But the documents said otherwise. Satellite photos showed entire villages burned. Drone footage, choppy and black and white, captured armed men forcing civilians into trucks. GPS logs tracked the routes. But what chilled her most were the financials. Offshore accounts tied to companies based in her own country. Not just any companies. Defense contractors, agribusinesses, and one political donor directly linked to the same senator she helped convict. This wasn't corruption. It was systemic. And if the files were real, they implicated powerful people, globally. She opened a secure channel and replied to the source. "I received the files. Who are you?" The reply came hours later. "I was embedded in the mission as an interpreter. They don't know I kept copies. If I go public, they'll kill me. But you, they listen to you." That night, Monley stared at her monitor. The weight of what she'd discovered settled like lead in her chest. She wasn't just a girl with a gift anymore. She was a threat. Monley met with two of her most trusted moderators, Caleb, a retired Navy cryptographer, and Zia, a forensic data analyst from Malaysia. "Do we leak it?" Zia asked bluntly. Caleb was less eager. Once you open that box, Monley, you don't get to close it. They'll come for you. Hard. Monley knew he was right. There was no halfway here. If the world saw these files, lives would be saved, but hers might be destroyed. Then again, wasn't that the point of blind proof? Truth over comfort. Justice over fear. She nodded. We release. But not all at once. Piece by piece. Carefully. With context. The first story dropped a week later, published anonymously through a journalist Monley trusted in Europe. The headline read, Hidden Campaign of Displacement in Amazon Basin Tied to Western Interests. The article detailed one village's destruction, complete with maps, eyewitness quotes, and satellite evidence. It went viral instantly. And within 48 hours, everything changed. Governments denied it. Investors panicked. Social media exploded. Protests erupted in 6 cities. Hashtags demanding accountability trended worldwide. Then, Monley got her first death threat. She tried to stay calm. Tried to act like it didn't shake her. But when a black SUV was spotted parked outside her house for the 3rd night in a row, her father panicked. This is too much, he said. You're 17. You're not supposed to be fighting governments. Monley didn't argue. She just replied softly, then who will? Her parents went silent. They didn't understand, but they didn't stop her. Instead, they helped her move. By sunrise, Monley had relocated to a secure apartment in a nearby city, operating under an alias. Blind proof was transferred to decentralized cloud servers. Her digital footprint was scrubbed. The war had begun. 2 weeks later, blind proof went offline. A massive coordinated cyber attack overwhelmed the servers. Zia traced it to a private cybersecurity firm in Virginia, known for working with intelligence agencies. But Monley was ready. A full mirror of the site launched hours later under a new domain, powered by blockchain nodes that couldn't be taken down. The more they attacked, the stronger she got. One evening, as she worked through more files, her secure line rang. The caller ID made her freeze. Judge Emerson. The same judge she had shocked in the first courtroom appearance. Miss Huang. His voice crackled over the line. I watched your latest release. You've caused quite a storm. I didn't cause it, she said. I just lit the fuse. There was a pause. You're about to make powerful enemies. Are you ready for what that means? No, she admitted. But that doesn't make it wrong. He exhaled slowly. Then may God protect you. Because the law may not. The whistleblower files kept spilling. Piece by piece, Monley fed vetted stories to journalists, activists, even UN observers. As global pressure mounted, international investigators opened probes. A special tribunal formed to examine the allegations. Governments scrambled to distance themselves. The corporations implicated saw billions wiped from their market value. CEOs resigned. Boards dissolved. And behind it all, a teenager pulled the strings, not out of malice but necessity. The truth had teeth. And Monley was no longer afraid to bite. But not everyone on her side stayed loyal. 3 months into the leak, one of her moderators, under threat or bribery, gave up her new location. One night, she came home and found her door ajar. Her laptop, gone. Her hard drives, wiped. But the worst was a note left on her wall in red marker. Stop or you won't get another warning. That was the night she cried. Not because she was scared, though she was. She cried because it meant she was finally getting close to the heart of it all. Monley didn't quit. She built a new setup, tighter than ever. Installed biometric locks. Tripwire code in her devices that uploaded everything to cloud redundancies. And then she launched the final phase of the leak. Operation Sunrise. She held nothing back. Audio files of private contractors admitting to crimes, flight logs of U.S. military transports linked to illegal arms deals, satellite photos of mass graves. The world couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't theory. This was evidence. An international tribunal wasn't enough. U.S. officials were now under fire, and Congress launched a special hearing into the whistleblower files. And they wanted Monley to testify. This time, she wouldn't be a witness to someone else's corruption. She'd be facing down an entire nation. Her lawyer tried to dissuade her. The risks were enormous. But she didn't flinch. She put on a blazer, tied her hair back, took the oath, and told the world what she'd found. The cameras rolled as she addressed the panel of senators, some of whom she knew had tried to silence her. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She just told the truth. "You taught us in school to stand up for what's right," she said. "To think critically. To be honest. But when I did that, I was told to shut up. Called a threat. Treated like an enemy. Well, I'm not your enemy. I'm your student. And this is me, doing exactly what you told me to do." By the end, there was silence. And then, applause. Weeks later, the tribunal delivered its verdict. Guilty. Dozens of officials resigned. Arrests were made. Reforms were passed. Blind Proof became a global network, its user base topping 10 million. It was translated into 14 languages. It became a force, recognized by the UN as a citizen tool for global accountability. And Monley? She disappeared. After her historic testimony before Congress, Monley vanished. Not kidnapped. Not detained. She chose to disappear. Only a handful of her closest confidants knew where she went, none of them in the same country. She used burner phones, kept her IP addresses masked, and deleted Blind Proof's core keys from every device she'd owned. To the public, she was a symbol. A teenage legend. A myth. To herself, she was just a girl who had seen too much too soon, and needed to breathe. Monley kept a journal in analog now, black ink on paper. No autocorrect. No metadata. She filled notebooks with reflections. Questions that haunted her. How many lives did I save? Was it worth the danger? Will I ever live a normal life again? Would I do it again? The answer, every time, was yes. But that didn't make it easier. She missed her parents. Her school library. The soft clatter of keyboards in the computer lab. She missed being a kid. But she couldn't unsee what she'd seen. And the world wouldn't let her go quietly. One day, while in a quiet hostel on the outskirts of Zurich, she received a call. Untraceable. Encrypted. But familiar. "Judge Emerson. You disappeared," he said, without judgment. "I needed time," she replied. "You've earned it. But something's come up. I wouldn't call unless it was serious." She tensed. "What is it?" He hesitated. "Someone's been arrested. A teenager. 15. Accused of cyber-terrorism. They claim she orchestrated a shutdown of a city's power grid. But the details don't add up. I reviewed her source code. It's yours." Monley blinked. "That's not possible." "She says you mentored her." Her name was Alma Rivera, a 15-year-old coder from El Paso. Gifted. Isolated. Obsessed with cybersecurity forums, especially one called EchoGlass, where Monley had once anonymously mentored young activists. Monley remembered her. Username, A7M0N. Brilliant. Reckless. Brave. But Alma had used one of Monley's open-source tools, Icebox, to break into a local power company's servers. Not to cause damage, but to prove a vulnerability. A white-hat hack. The kind Monley herself had once done. But the media twisted it. Called her a Latina anarchist. A domestic threat. And now she was facing 15 years in federal custody. Monley paced for hours in her rented room, torn between self-preservation and purpose. Getting involved meant exposure. Risk. Return to the spotlight. But she couldn't watch another kid be destroyed for doing what she'd once been praised for. She typed out a short message to Judge Emerson. "Send me the files. I'll testify." Monley arrived at the trial under a fake name and with a team of digital bodyguards. Dressed plainly. No cameras. No press. She entered the courtroom silently, And when she took the stand, the judge and attorneys froze. They recognized her instantly. The girl who shocked the world was back. Monley spoke clearly, concisely. She explained Icebox's purpose: to expose systemic weaknesses in infrastructure before malicious actors did. She outlined how Alma had contacted her with questions about the tool's ethics. She emphasized the non-destructive intent. The logs proved it. She didn't bring the power grid down, Monley said. She brought the truth up. Her final words echoed in the chamber. You can criminalize curiosity, but you can't silence genius. Not forever. The judge ruled Alma's actions to be non-malicious intrusion, a violation, yes, but not terrorism. She was released with probation and ordered to mentor others in ethical hacking. Outside the courthouse, Alma turned to Monley and whispered, "You saved me." Monley shook her head. "No. You saved yourself. I just reminded them who you are." And then, just as quickly, Monley disappeared again. The world may not have seen her, but her fingerprints were everywhere. Blind proof grew. So did its imitators. Young coders now had mentors. Whistleblowers had safe channels. Law schools taught the Monley Protocol for digital evidence integrity. She was a name whispered in activist circles, taught in underground workshops, and quoted in ethics lectures. Truth doesn't need age to matter. It just needs someone willing to speak it. That line appeared on posters, documentaries, even a TED Talk. But Monley stayed silent. Until one final message. 5 years after her disappearance, an anonymous email appeared in Judge Emerson's inbox. No greeting. No sign-off. Just a single sentence. You were the first adult who ever listened. And attached, a manifesto. Part memoir, part manual, part warning. Monley's voice, clear, raw, real. It ended with these words. If you're reading this, it means I'm still watching. And if you try to lie again, so is the world. Where is Monley now? Some say she lives in Iceland, advising digital privacy think tanks. Others believe she walks among college students, unrecognized, quietly shaping the next generation of thinkers. There's a theory that she's no longer a person, but a network. A team. A movement. But perhaps she is simply herself. Still coding. Still watching. Still brilliant. In a quiet archive room beneath the digital ethics wing of a university that didn't even exist when Monley first stepped into court, a professor pulled a dust-covered file marked with a single name. ML Zhou. Inside were fragments. Court transcripts, anonymized chat logs, and blurry screenshots of a girl standing tall in a courtroom 5 years ago. A generation of students would one day study what happened in that moment. But few would ever truly understand what it took to get there. Alma Rivera went on to create CYBERBRIDGE, a nonprofit that taught kids from underrepresented communities how to code, how to protect their data, and most importantly, how to ask questions that made people uncomfortable. She credited everything to a stranger she only met once. Judge Emerson retired a year after Monley's second testimony. He now lectures on judicial integrity and the ethics of AI, opening each class with the same phrase. Don't confuse age with ability. I once watched a teenager dismantle lies with logic and leave a courtroom breathless. All across the globe, people who once doubted the youth started listening. A 16-year-old in Mumbai used blind proof to expose a corrupt land deal. A 15-year-old in Brazil reverse-engineered spyware installed on public school tablets. A 17-year-old in Texas testified before the Senate on digital surveillance, armed with evidence she gathered from a now open-source Monley protocol. They didn't all know her name, but they followed her legacy. And as for Monley, she didn't want statues, or awards, or her face on a magazine. What she wanted, what she chose, was impact without spotlight. She became the quiet architect of a movement that didn't need her voice to echo anymore. Her genius had been revealed once. That was enough. Now it was time for others to speak. Monley's journey began with being underestimated, misunderstood, and marginalized. But through quiet determination, unstoppable intelligence, and an unwavering belief in truth, she transformed from a teenager dismissed by her community to a legend who redefined how the world sees youth and genius. Her courtroom appearance wasn't just a moment, it was a milestone. It challenged assumptions, changed lives, and inspired a global wave of teenage empowerment in tech, law, and beyond. Her story reminds us that genius doesn't always wear a lab coat or stand behind a podium. Sometimes it walks silently through a school hallway, sits quietly in the back row of a classroom, or hides behind the glow of a laptop screen. Monley shocked a judge. But more than that, she woke the world up. And now the question isn't whether teenagers can be brilliant, it's how many of them we're still ignoring. If Monley's story moved you, shocked you, or reminded you of someone you know, drop a comment below. Have you ever been underestimated? Or do you know a young person doing incredible things who needs to be seen? We want to hear your stories. Tap that like button if you believe in the power of youth. Subscribe for more jaw-dropping, true-life stories of brilliance and courage. And check out our next video, because you won't believe what a 13-year-old did to take down $1 billion scam. Thanks for watching. Remember, genius doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it waits for the right moment to shock the world.